Okay. Welcome everyone to the life and the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. Last week, I made an announcement that starting tonight, we're going to go back to looking at the life of the Baal Shem Tov. This series has been going for approximately 5 or 6 months now. We began with the life of the Baal Shem Tov, but it was quite general, and it was really only mostly up to the time that he revealed himself. And after many, many, many months of learning his teachings, I felt I wanted to go back and look at the life of the Baal Shem Tov again. Some of it might be what we learned already, but most of it will be filling in and expanding. And here I want to go through his whole life. So I want to start again from his coming into this world. And there are 2 traditions as to how the soul of the Baal Shem Tov came into this world. One of them is that it was time for his soul to come to this world, and he did not want to come unless it could be assured that he'd have 60 heroes, 60 scholars, 60 students that would kind of surround him, would be with him. And he didn't want to come to this world unless he could be assured of that. What is this based on? If you look in the Song of Songs, it talks about King Solomon being surrounded by 60 supporters. So the tradition is, now where these traditions come from, it's not exactly sure. It could be that the Baal Shem himself said this at a certain point and it was recorded, but he was assured he would have his 60 strong heroes surrounding him. And if we look at his life, that is really what happened. Is his fame spread, his influence spread, and even more after he passed away. But even in his lifetime, his fame and influence was very far spread. But he really had a limited amount of close students that lived in his area, his physical area, and were part of his minyan and were his main supporters. So after he passed away, they were the ones who assured that his teachings and his philosophy and the movement that he started would be perpetuated. So that's one tradition. The other tradition is that his parents were Eliezer and Sarah. They were great tzaddikim, both of them. And they were, this is very, very crucial, they were part of a group of hidden tzaddikim. They actually had a name, the Camp of Israel. And they were hidden, but amongst themselves, they had big plans of how to support the Jewish people, spread the Torah, give people hope and encouragement, but they all did it in a hidden way. There was no big signs about the Camp of Israel and all of their plans and what they're doing. It was all in secret. And the Baal Shem Tov's parents were part of this group. And they were also known for their hospitality. So it was decided in heaven that they would test this couple to see, like, how far does their hospitality go? And at that point, they had no children. And so this new soul was getting ready to come into the world. And the question is, would they be the fitting parents, the fitting vessel for this soul? So it was decided in heaven to send Eliyahu Navi to test them out. So he came as kind of like a ragged, kind of like a beggar. And he appeared on their door in the middle of Shabbos. And he had like a backpack, and he was carrying a bundle, and his shoes were full of dust. So it was clear that he had been traveling on Shabbat. He didn't just, he wasn't like next door and he just came next door. And he knocked on the door and they looked at him. It was obvious to him that he was not observant, but they invited him in. They made him part of the meal. They fed him very well. And then for third meal, he was still there. They gave him much to eat, and not a word about like where are you coming from? How did you get here? Were you traveling on Shabbat? Nothing. After Shabbat, the Eliyahu Navi, in the guise of this beggar, says he wants to leave. And they said, "Oh, no, it's nighttime. It's not a good time to leave. Please stay with us." And he insisted that he needed to go. And so Eliezer accompanied him to the edge of town. They gave him food. And when they got to the edge of town, Eliyahu revealed himself to Eliezer. And he said, truthfully, I came to test you. And I want to tell you that you will have a son, and you should name him Yisrael, and he will be a great light in Israel. And he left. Sure enough, they did have a child, the Baal Shem Tov, whose name they named him Yisrael. It was clear to everyone he was a very, very special child right from the beginning. But at age 5, his father passed away. And this is such an important part of the story of the Baal Shem Tov that he gave the Baal Shem Tov his final blessings. And the version that is usually given over is he told him just 2 things. I have found another version that were more like 4 things. The 2 things that are always quoted are, he said to the Baal Shem Tov, he said, "Do not fear anything but God. Don't be afraid of anything in this world. Only," and here when we talk about fear, we're talking about respect and awe and reverence. Only have awe and reverence for God, but also only have fear of God, meaning a proper kind of relationship to the master of the world. And the second thing he told him was to love every Jew, no matter who they are, whatever situation they're in, to love every Jew. These are the 2 things he told him, and these 2 things most certainly became the pillar of his life, is that he feared nothing, as we'll see through his life, and he made the love of every Jew the absolute pillar of the Hasidic movement. The other version is his father told him 2 other things, which the Baal Shem Tov incorporated again, totally into his life. The first one was to always be aware that God is with you, and you should be contemplating, thinking about, relating to God at every minute of your life. Constant, what's called devekut, clinging to God. And the other thing he told him was that he should delve into the depths of the Torah, but he should hide his greatness, and he should appear just like an ordinary person. So all four of these things became the actual guiding light of the Baal Shem Tov. And as we develop the story, we'll see how true it was. But he stayed true to these ideas and blessing that his father gave to him. So his father passes away at age 5. He has no idea that his parents are part of this secret society. He really has no idea. His mother was, they were very poor, and she had to take all kinds of menial kinds of jobs just to support herself and her son. And she was very, very careful that the whole year afterwards to take, I'll call him here his name, Yisrael, to shul so he could say Kaddish for his father. He was only 5 years old, but she made sure to bring him to shul, and for the whole year he said Kaddish for his father, and she made sure he was enrolled into Cheder and was learning. Tragically, she died a year later. So at age 6, he became an orphan. And in the town where he was born, which is called Okop, O-K-O-P. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Okop. He had no other relatives. So the townspeople, they may not have known that Eliezer and Sarah were in this secret society, but everyone saw them as tzaddikim and holy people. And so the town took it upon themselves to support the Baal Shem and make sure that he was educated. And so he ended up living in the house of the teacher of the cheder that he went to. And it wasn't the greatest atmosphere. The teacher and his wife were very strict, and they, obviously they meant well. They were, trying to take in this orphan, but it wasn't an easy time for the Baal Shem Tov. He had just lost both of his parents, and he began to, on his own, to go out to the forest because he didn't feel all that comfortable either in their home or in school. He was learning, but he was very restless. That's the word. He was very restless. And so he was constantly, as a 6-year-old, going out to the fields, going out to the forest, and communing with God. It wasn't like running away and whittling away his time. His father told him to always be aware of God's presence and to always be thinking of God. So even as a 6-year-old, he was constantly thinking of God, speaking to God, praying to God. And this went on for approximately 2 years. When he was 8 years old, on one of these times he was in the forest, he saw in the distance a man in a talit and tefillin davening. And he saw a great light around this person. So he kept his distance and just watched. And the man was davening with deep kavana. And afterwards, he took off his talis and tefillin. And he notices that there's a young boy like looking at him. So he goes over to Yisrael and he says, "What are you doing in the forest by yourself?" And he said, "I love to come to the forest." Oh no, the man whose name was Shlomo Zalman said, "Aren't you afraid to be in the forest by yourself?" So he answered him, he said, "No, my father told me not to be afraid of anything but God, and so I'm not afraid to be in the forest by myself." And when he heard this, he understood. He said, "By any chance was your father Eliezer?" Because he knew that Eliezer had passed away and his wife, and there was an orphan. And he said, "Yes, that was my father." And so he said, "Would you like to sit and learn for a while?" So he had Masechet Pesachim. They sat down and they ended up learning for hours. And he saw that this child was very smart, very, very open to learning. And he said to him, "Would you like to come with me?" And the Baal Shem Tov said, "Yes." And for the next 3 years, Shlomo Zalman was part of this group. That's why he understood who this child was. And for 3 years, they went from place to place, and he raised Yisrael for 3 years and was teaching him all the time. And he was one of these hidden tzaddikim. So he would go from place to place, and he would be teaching people, encouraging people. He met with other of the tzaddikim, but again, Yisrael didn't understand really what was going on here. And Shlomo Zalman would like go to different places with different purposes in mind. So by the time he was 11, the Baal Shem Tov was very educated already. They were learning all the time, and he was also teaching him the inner dimensions of the Torah. At age 11, he said to him, "There is a person who lives in the edge of town here. His name is Reb Meir, and it's time for you to go learn with him." And with very heartfelt goodbyes, Shlomo Zalman deposited Yisrael with Reb Meir. And Reb Meir taught him for another approximately 4 years until he was almost 16. And he was also teaching him the inner teachings of the Torah. He was already teaching him Kabbalah. And this brings the Baal Shem Tov to almost age 16. But we're going to go back at his bar mitzvah. At his bar mitzvah, Reb Meir revealed to him who he was, who his parents were, and this group that they were called the Camp of Israel, and their purpose in the world. And at his bar mitzvah, he was initiated into this hidden group of tzaddikim who were in their own way trying to lift up Israel, to help in whatever way they could, to do all kinds of rectifications of situations that needed rectification, and especially in education, because at that time, a good part of the Jewish people were very uneducated. You had almost two classes of Jews. You had the scholarly class and what we'll call the simple Jews. And most of the simple Jews, some of them didn't even know how to read Hebrew. Some of them did, but didn't quite understand everything. But they were observant. And as we'll see later, they became such a big part of the Baal Shem Tov's life and philosophy. So at age 13, he joined this group of hidden tzaddikim. On his 16th birthday, I believe we did tell the story the first time, but it's worth going over it again. If we remember, he was born on Chai Elul. He was born on the 18th day of Elul. His bar mitzvah was on the 18th of Elul. And on his 16th birthday, on Chai Elul, the Baal Shem Tov was, at this point, he was almost on his own. He had left Rebbe Meir, and he was part of these hidden tzaddikim. He was going from place to place, looking for ways that he could teach people, encourage people, tell stories, especially with children, as we will see, that in different places he became like the assistant to the teacher, and he was in charge of taking care of the children, bringing them to Cheder, taking them home from Cheder, reviewing with them what they had learned, telling them stories, singing with them. So this is what the Baal Shem did in many, many cases during these years. But when he's 16, on Chai Elul, on his birthday, for the first time, Eliyahu Navi appeared to him. And the story is like this. The Baal Shem was at an inn, and a husband and wife were running the inn. And he was there just in between, going from place to place. And he noticed that the innkeeper, the husband and wife, were constantly saying things like Baruch Hashem, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. May the glory of God be forever and ever. Shaviti Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. I place God before me at all times. And they were constantly saying these things, sometimes like kind of below their breath, sometimes out loud. And the Baal Shem noticed this, but didn't pay it much mind. Then he went out to the field to pray, and he was praying according to the unifications as taught by the Arizal. And the Baal Shem, Eliyahu Navi appeared to him. And he said to him, I want to teach you a very important thing, that you are praying now with the Kabbalistic unifications of the Arizal. And I can see that you're, in a certain way, struggling a little bit because they're so complex. He said, I want to tell you, when the innkeeper and his wife say these simple sayings with their whole heart, complete sincerity, that the result or the energy, the light that they create by doing this is as great as the unifications that you're trying to accomplish. And so we're told that this was like a major revelation in the life of the Baal Shem Tov. In the next 10 years, Eliyahu Navi became his main teacher. And he came to him very often and taught him not just Torah, but taught him, we'll call it, let's say, philosophy, taught him a way to look at the world, a way to understand the meaning of having good personal attributes. And so many times the Eliyahu Navi would send the Baal Shem Tov to witness the actions of a certain person. And in most cases, they were simple people who acted very simply, but underneath it was a great lesson in faith and a way to serve God. Even though it seemed simple, the Eliyahu Navi was trying to teach the Baal Shem Tov. It wasn't simple at all. If it's done with your whole heart. And that's why, for those who were here last week, we learned in Keter Shem Tov that the Baal Shem Tov quoted the idea from the Gemara that whether you do a lot or you do a little, what matters is if your heart is directed to God. Not that it means that you should do just a little when you could do a lot, but it's a saying that some people, the most they can do is a little. That's just the most they can do. But if they're doing it with their whole heart and soul, it affects heaven in the same way as someone learning the entire Gemara backwards and forwards. In other words, it's somewhat relative. But at that time, the scholarly class, in a certain way, looked down on the simple Jew as being uneducated and unrefined. But on his 16th birthday, Chai Elul, Eliyahu Navi was trying to teach him this very deep lesson, which became like the pillar of his teachings from then on. At age 18, the Baal Shem Tov returned to his hometown, to Okup. And there he became, in a more official way, an assistant teacher for young children. And he really dedicated actually it was approximately 2 years to teaching these children. Now, I should mention that at the same time that he moved back, he was being recognized in this society of hidden tzaddikim as a very, very special neshama, even though he was only 18 at that point. And he started, he was being looked at as a future leader. And so one of his first suggestions was that wherever these hidden tzaddikim are, that they make it a major platform to make sure that children are being educated. Because you have to understand that many of the Jewish families, they could barely put bread on their table. And so many times when a child was 9, 10, 11, they couldn't afford to send them to school. And they needed the help just to be able to eat. And so you had really almost the vast majority of Jews as being somewhat uneducated. So the Baal Shem Tov said our main focus should be that young children are educated. And they began to raise the funds in order to help families have their children educated. So he returns to his hometown and he becomes a student, an assistant teacher. And at that point, the people of the town remember him. He was like this restless little orphan. And that now they see, well, he's grown up and he seems like he turned out just fine. And so at age 20, he was married. And his wife was Chava, but tragically she died right after the wedding. And so this obviously was somewhat traumatic for the Baal Shem Tov. He got married and his wife died shortly afterwards. So at age 20, a major part of the story unfolds. And that is, we know that the Baal Shem Tov as the Baal Shem Tov, the master of the good name. But he wasn't the first. In this society of hidden tzaddikim, which had actually existed for quite a while, there had been a number of Baal Shems before him. There was Eliyahu Baal Shem. There was, I think, Yoel Baal Shem and Adam Baal Shem. Adam Baal Shem at this time was the leader of these hidden tzaddikim. He was originally from Poland, and for whatever reason, he had moved far away to Vienna. Yet he was still considered the leader of this hidden group of tzaddikim. He was a great scholar and Kabbalist, and he led this group of hidden tzaddikim. He was getting old, and he was praying to God, who will succeed me? And he got a message from heaven that in the town of Okop, there is a young man named Yisrael, ben Eliezer V'Sara. He will succeed you. Now, Adam probably had heard of him already from the other tzaddikim, and he understood this was a message from heaven. So here's how the story plays itself out. His son was Nachum. He was also a great light, but for whatever reason, he wasn't seen to be the successor of his father. And so Adam Baal Shem Tov, who was really getting close to his death, told his son, I'm sending you to Okop, and there you will find your soulmate, and you will be able to marry, and you'll have to find this Yisrael ben Eliezer and give him this manuscript. Adam Baal Shem, according to tradition, had a very, very secret Kabbalistic manuscript that had been handed down through the ages. And if he was going to be the new leader of the group, Adam Baal Shem felt that he needed to have this manuscript. And so he sent his son, and he came to Okop, and people saw that he was a scholar and a very upright person. And when he let it be known that he was looking for a wife, so one of the very rich people in town proposed a match, and he accepted it, and he married this young woman. In the meantime, the Baal Shem Tov, when he is not being a assistant to the children, he would be more or less living in the Beit Midrash, in the house of study. And when Nahum, the son of Adam Baal Shem, started asking, is there a Yisrael ben Eliezer in this town? And so they said, yeah. And they pointed him out to Yisrael. And Yisrael at that time was also doing like chores and errands for other scholars. That's how he, they would give him a little money for doing errands. And he basically was sleeping and spending all of his time in the shul. So Nahum is sitting in the Beit Midrash learning every day. And he doesn't see anything special about Yisrael ben Eliezer. And so what he does is he also is learning there, a good part of the time. And so he would like put his head down like he's sleeping. And the Baal Shem would be sleeping on a bench in the back. But when he saw that everyone else had gone or was sleeping, he'd get up and he would be learning. But there would be a light around him. And so Nahum started to notice that when he wasn't like kind of pretending just to be an ordinary person, there was an aura of light around him while he was learning. So what he did is, one time when the Baal Shem Tov is learning and he put his head down for a minute, Nahum put a page of this manuscript. And the Baal Shem woke up and he noticed a page of a manuscript in front of him. And so he starts reading it and it's like, whoa. And Nahum's watching him and he sees that he's understanding this manuscript. The Baal Shem Tov folds it up, puts it in his pocket, and goes about his business. And this happens for like a week. And he keeps on putting pages. He sees the Baal Shem is learning, and he understands why his father sent him, who this person is. And so he finally confronts the Baal Shem Tov and says, I see that you're hiding yourself from everyone, but my father sent me here with this manuscript, and please be my teacher. You're obviously meant to be my teacher. And the Baal Shem said, I'll do that, but no one can know. I don't want to be revealed right now. I need to be hidden. And so Nahum goes back to his father-in-law and says, would it be possible, could we put up like a mechitza in a part of the house of study, the Beit Midrash, so I could have a little bit more privacy? So he said, sure. So he did that. And so what happened is the Baal Shem Tov and he began to learn together. But the deal was that it was as if Nahum was teaching Yisrael, but really what's happening is Yisrael was teaching Nahum. But again, the Baal Shem at this point of his life was insistent on being hidden. So at a certain point, it became hard to kind of hide what was going on there. So Nahum goes to his father-in-law and says, would it be possible to build me like this little hut, a little bit away from everyone, so I can delve deeper into my teaching? And is it possible that we pay Yisrael a little wage so he can like serve me, bring me food and water? And his father-in-law, who loved him dearly, said, of course. So he built him this little hut, and the two of them were now kind of like secretly learning together. And the deeper they got into the learning, Nachum was begging the Baal Shem Tov to reveal more and more of the secrets of this manuscript. And the Baal Shem Tov said, it could be very dangerous. These are very, very deep secrets. They're not meant for everyone. But Nachum was very insistent that he wanted to learn these things. So the Baal Shem Tov, who really loved him, said, we can, but the way we have to do it is we have to fast from Shabbat to Shabbat. We have to be going to the mikveh every day. And after Shabbat, on that Motzi Shabbat, that Saturday Shabbat, we have to stay awake the whole night. And we cannot even zone out even for a minute. And if we can accomplish that, these secrets will be able to be given over. And so they did it. They fasted from Shabbat to Shabbat. They went to the mikveh. They had all these kavanot. And then Motzi Shabbat, they had to stay up all night. And at one point, it was getting towards dawn. The Baal Shem Tov noticed that Nachum was nodding out. And he like jumped on him, like, you have to stay awake. But what happened was Nachum fell into this deep sleep and never woke up. And the Baal Shem Tov was very traumatized by this. And no one understood what had happened here. And he, according to tradition, he took this manuscript and he hid it in a cave. And I don't think we know whatever happened to this manuscript, because at that point the Baal Shem realized that this wasn't meant to be revealed now, and he hid this manuscript away. And what happened after that is, because the Baal Shem had been learning this manuscript, he was now privy to many, many deep Kabbalistic secrets, including what was called Kabbalah Ma'asit, how you could use different names of God, different names of angels, and do miracles, change nature. So the Baal Shem Tov once was by a river, and he had not actually tried to apply this. So he decided he was going to try it. He put his belt down on the water, and by using these names, he was able to quite literally walk on water. He was able to cross the river on top of the water. And when he got to the other side, he realized, I really shouldn't have done that. That if this knowledge is to be used, it can't be used for just so I could cross the river. And at that point he made like a promise that he would never use that kind of wisdom again for his own benefit. Okay, we're going to tell one more story. That's all we have time for tonight. At that point, the Baal Shem Tov moved. Brody was a major city of scholarship. There were many, many, many great Torah scholars living in Brody. Very near Brody was a town called Reisen. The Baal Shem Tov moved to Reisen, and interestingly enough, started to feel that being totally hidden, maybe it's not a good idea. Remember, he's still part of this group of hidden tzaddikim, and he wants to accomplish. He wants to do big things. Anyways, in Ryson, he starts to reveal himself somewhat, and people start turning to him for advice, and he became like a judge in this town. People brought their halakha questions to him, and he would answer them, and everyone was very happy with him. I should mention that I think it was actually a little bit later. He became a shochet, but that was later. Anyways, so his reputation is somewhat growing in this town. In the town of Brody, one of the luminaries was Ephraim Kitover. He had a son, Gershon Kitover, and he had a daughter, Chana. He had a disagreement with one of his friends over a financial kind of deal, and they needed to take it to a court, to a Beit Din. And so this other person said, I've heard that in Ryson, there is a person that people bring their halachic disputes to, and everyone is very pleased with how he deals with them. And it's better because in Brody, everyone knows us. So let's go there. So they did, they went there. And this Rebbe Ephraim Kitover meets the Baal Shem Tov. And for him to allow this person who was a stranger to him to judge his case, he had to know that he was a scholar. And so he questioned him, and the Baal Shem Tov gave him these very deep insights into Torah and halacha. And Rebbe Ephraim was very impressed, extremely impressed. So they brought this question, and the Baal Shem Tov gave his answer, how they should solve it. Both of them saw it was a wonderful way to solve their dispute in a fair Torah way. And so afterwards, Ephraim Kitover said to the Baal Shem Tov, I hear that you're a widower. I have a daughter who is a divorcee. Would you like to marry her? And it says that the Baal Shem, as soon as he met him, he could tell that he was meant to marry his daughter. And so the Baal Shem said, absolutely, I'll marry your daughter. He said, but we have to do it in the following way, because here, many of the people in town want me to marry their daughters, and they've been very good to me, and I don't want to disappoint them. And so we can make a what's called a tanayim, make a contract that I will marry your daughter, but we have to do it in secret, and you have to, you're marrying your daughter to me, not my Torah knowledge. Meaning, usually in a contract that they used to write, they would write all kinds of superlatives about the bride and the groom. And so the Baal Shem says, no, just put my name, Yisrael ben Eliezer. No one needs to know anything else. And so the Ephraim Kitover agreed. He took the marriage contract, and in those days, they used to wait up to a year before the actual marriage. It could be less, but it could be up to a year. And he left with the arrangement that at the right time, the Baal Shem will come to Brody and they'll get married. So what happened was on the way back, Ephraim died. He became ill and he passed away. So when they brought him back to Brody, his son found this marriage contract and he couldn't believe it. They were one of the leading families of Brody, and he knew nothing about a marriage contract for his sister to, it doesn't even say Rabbi Yisrael ben Eliezer. Like, what happened here? And so he didn't know what to think of it, but the Baal Shem wasn't there. A short time later, the Baal Shem Tov leaves Resin, comes to Brody. He finds Gershon Kitover and says, I have a matter I'd like to talk to you. An important part of the story is on his way to Brody, he had been dressing more like respectfully. He took off those clothes and he put on like peasant clothes. And he comes to Gershon of Kitover and he says, I have a matter to talk to you, but it should be in private. So I said, okay. So they went in private and he kind of like, the Baal Shem kind of blurts out, give me my wife. And Gershon like, who are you? What are you talking about? And he says, I'm sure you have the marriage contract. And so Gershon Kitover puts it together. He cannot understand what his father did here. He's looking at this guy. He looks like an uneducated peasant. He goes to his sister and he says, like, this is the craziest thing in the world. And he shows her the contract. And he says, but I just met him. It's just like, there's no way you can marry him. And his sister said, well, if my father thought it was appropriate, I trust my father. And Gershon Kitover tried to talk her out of it. And she said, no, she wanted to honor her father. Her father had just passed away. And she felt, if this is what my father wanted for me. And so they're going to go ahead with the marriage. Before, though, the Baal Shem says, I need to talk to her one time before the marriage. That was, in those days, that's how it was done. And so when he is alone with her, he reveals to her who he really is. And he says, but right now, I'm dedicated to be hidden. She knew it's right now. And he said, we might have many challenges, especially financially, if I'm going to remain hidden like this. But I wanted you to know that, and you need to understand what you're getting into. And she agreed. She agreed. And they were married. And her brother, Gershon Kitover, was so embarrassed that his sister had married this, what he thought was just a totally uneducated, that he basically urged her, please don't live here. I can't be in his presence. You need to leave. And they did. And they left. And that begins a whole new part of the story of the Baal Shem Tov. But I want to end it on his wife. His second wife was Hannah. First wife was Chava. His second wife was Hannah. And she must have been a tremendously righteous woman, because in the next classes, we'll see she stuck with the Baal Shem Tov through thick and thin, and they had a very difficult life. Later on, it became a little bit easier once he revealed himself. But until then, the Baal Shem was like a day labor. They lived in abject poverty, and she stuck with him the whole way, the whole way. So not a simple thing. But I want to end it. We'll pick it up next week. Again, he's like 20 years old. No, he's a little bit older now, 21, 22. I will mention that right when all of this is happening, he becomes one of the 3 leaders of the hidden tzaddikim. And he's by far the youngest. And he becomes one of the 3 leaders. And they move away from Brody. And I want to end on a good note here, because we're going to see that for many, many, many years, Gershon Kitover treated the Baal Shem Tov very poorly. He considered him a dunce. He was embarrassed to be in his presence. Yet he was married to his sister, and his sister, he could see, for whatever reason, was refused to divorce him. He urged her to divorce him many, many times. But I want to end on a good note. After really about 13 years of treating the Baal Shem Tov like a dunce, even though a few times he tried to help them out, everything. Once the Baal Shem revealed himself, Gershon Kitover became one of his main students. So you can imagine the humbleness and the shame and the regret that he went through when the Baal Shem finally revealed himself, and everyone understood who this soul was. So you would think that he would be so embarrassed, he would like move countries, but to his great credit, he became one of the main students of the Baal Shem, and they became very, very close. They became very close. So this is a beautiful tikkun that Gershon Kitover made. There'll be more stories in the future. Okay, l'chaim, everyone, l'chaim.